I didn't fully realize that what I was dealing with was dissociative identity disorder until I was 25. And a lot of that was due to denial, because there were actually signs ever since I was a kid. And once I accepted what was going on, I was able to look back and understand a lot more. But for the longest time, I thought that I just dealt with dissociation, and I was in denial about the autonomy of the other parts. A lot of aspects of the dissociative identity disorder were very hidden from me until I was in a safer place. I dealt with a lot of depersonalization and derealization. So depersonalization makes you feel unreal, and derealization makes your external surroundings feel unreal. Sound would change as if I was underwater, voices would sound murmured, and I couldn't understand what they were saying. And it would feel like there was fog between me and everything, or like there was a clear glass pane in front of me. Or I would feel as if I was looking at the world outside from inside my head. Just as a small presence in the back of my head looking through my eyes. I would look down at my body and feel completely disconnected from it. I first became aware of being disconnected from my body when I was around 7. I remember looking down and just being shocked that I had a body, and shocked that I'd forgotten about it and that I felt so disconnected from it. And I believe I did feel more connected to my body before this point because it did come as a shock. This makes sense that the disconnect from self would go along with a physical disconnect, because the body is the subconscious mind. I remember being aware of coming to after having been in a sort of trance state, and I would realize that I had been sitting zoned out for ages, just looking at a wall, or just compulsively doing self-destructive coping skills like skin picking. And I would come to and just realize that I had been doing things before, but I hadn't been consciously aware. And it would feel like I'd been sitting in a pitch black room. Sometimes I would be sitting in this pitch blackness of my mind and I would hear talking, and it would be talking between other disconnected parts, speaking to each other. I remember asking one of my caretakers if it was normal to zone out staring at the wall for hours. And unfortunately, this wasn't a red flag to them. They told me yes, this was normal because they did it too. Now I know that dissociative disorders are often passed down genetically as well as due to environmental triggers. Oftentimes when the other parts would be triggered out, I would be aware inside my head. I would be able to see what was happening, but I would be completely disconnected from emotions. So they would carry the emotional experience and protect me from having to feel it. And then afterwards I would forget about it as if it hadn't happened because it felt like it had no impact on me. Oftentimes too, I would be disconnected during traumatic experiences and then forget them completely afterwards, only to start seeing them in dreams or flashbacks later, and only then to realize that they actually happened. Oftentimes with the amnesia, I would have amnesia for the amnesia itself. So I would forget an event, but not even be aware that it had been forgotten. I was completely unaware of the extent of my amnesia until I was an adult, and the memories started coming back to me once I was safer and able to safely process them. There were a lot more disconnected child parts and disconnected teenagers that were inside my mind throughout my childhood and teenage years. And I would see them in dreams and get communications from them there. I can remember seeing the dissociated parts in my dreams when I was a little kid, and I didn't really understand their significance to me. I just saw them as random dreams, kind of recurring characters. I still didn't know what the other parts were, so I thought that they were ghosts and demons, And when I would hear them talking in my head, sometimes I would think I was hallucinating, sometimes I would think that I was hearing ghosts or demons talking to me. I worried that they were coming from an external spirit realm and that I was being haunted. The other parts would take over and control my actions. Oftentimes, when traumatic experiences happened, and they would also come out and control my actions in response to triggers. I used to think that maybe they were demons and that I was being possessed, because suddenly another being from inside my head would take over and they were in control of my actions instead of me. I actually used to have dissociative psychogenic seizures. So that can happen with dissociative disorders when certain emotional content is traumatic and not being processed consciously. It can come out as other symptoms instead of being felt as emotions. So I dealt with psychogenic seizures when I was a kid. They happened usually at night, and again, I wasn't sure how to reach out for support about them. That lasted for a while and then stopped, which I feel thankful to say. And then when I got older, I learned that dissociation and psychogenic seizures is a thing, so that finally made sense. I can distinctly remember being 8 years old and having the sense that I was a completely different person from who I had been before. I realize now that we underwent a shift in host in the system, and around that time I became dissociated from the person that I had been before. The person I had been before got disconnected and held safe inside as basically my inner child, and then I continued on as a new person from age 8 onwards. And I didn't understand at all what was happening back then, back when I actually was 8. I just knew that all of a sudden I felt completely different, and it seemed that the memories that had happened before that time, it felt like they happened to somebody else, or like I was looking at a past life. And I felt disconnected from the emotions of the time before too. So, whereas in the time before I felt a lot of fear, in the time after I felt a lot of depression. So yeah, I just had the sense of mysteriously feeling like a different person and having no way to explain it. And there were also other disconnected parts inside my head at that time too. We already had a lot of others living inside, but that's the first memory I have of actually disconnecting from my previous sense of self into a different one. It was extremely confusing when I disconnected and became a new part when I was 8. Part of me disconnected and I lost part of myself. My inner child disconnected and I felt like a different person than I'd been before. It was really unfathomable. I wasn't at all sure how to reach out for support about it because I didn't know how to explain to people that I felt like a different person. And all of a sudden I had a different internal emotional landscape completely. The feelings that had consumed me before were suddenly gone, and I had a new different set of primary emotions. I dealt with a lot more sadness after that than fear consciously. I became very depressed, and it was basically like grieving myself. I felt as if I had lost myself and I had to grieve that loss in becoming a new person. Nowadays, I understand that this is dissociation, this is depersonalization, and dissociation of parts of yourself. So it's nice to be able to at least have that understanding now.